212, com check.
DPS, go. Inco, go. PUS, go. Surgeon, go. Booster, go. Copy that. We have a go from you guys.
This is Talking Sound.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Talking Sound podcast, the only podcast on the internet where negative 10 is a number to be desired. Coming at you live from the throbbing heart of rock and roll that is Austin, Texas. My name is Christopher Jordan. I am your host. Today on the podcast, we have my very good friend, audio engineer, AV Swiss Army knife like myself, Mr. JC Charvet. How have you been, buddy?
Pretty good.
Fantastic. JC locally actually works at a local rehearsal space and studio called Music Lab. Now, over the last year, he's been doing the install there for their studio and everything. Tell us how that's been going, man.
So it's going pretty well. It's keeping us busy. There's a lot of them going on. Some of them are small, some of them are large. We just did the rodeo in Dripping Springs.
Okay.
For anyone out there that's going to get asked to do a sound system in a rodeo arena, it is extremely difficult because most of them are an entire metal shell.
Yes.
There is going to be no sound baffles anywhere. Most of them don't want to spend the money. Some of them will do the insulation on the ceiling, but not many of them do it because they're mostly open spaces.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to insulate it. And therefore you end up with reverberation everywhere. We thought we had the design not completely right at some point that we went back to community from community speakers out of Pennsylvania. And we sent them our blueprints of what we did, and they came back saying, you did exactly what we would have done.
Yeah.
There's nothing else you can do. You have a metal shell. And even I asked, I was like, what if we bring our speakers lower from the ceiling, and if we do this and we do that? And yes, it doesn't matter what you do. You can try to put more speakers to drive less sound to bounce around, but eventually that sound has to go somewhere, so it will bounce around, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that was a really big challenge. We were afraid.
Unless you can make everybody 30 feet tall.
Yeah.
that would make a large difference in absorbing the sound in that middle area where it's bouncing around.
Yeah, but the building, the system uses a biamp processor in there, and so we went back to EQ each microphone.
Yep.
And outside of tuning the PA by itself, because also the PA is a 70-volt sound system, so it's not a regular 8-ohm driven.
Yeah, and those are different.
So the 70-volt doesn't have the same response. It shows you the frequency response is somewhat normal, but it actually doesn't reproduce the sound quite the same.
Now,
so when you tune that one, it's flat out different from a regular system.
It is. Now explain to everybody, because I got kind of thrown to the wolves the first time I dealt with a step-down transformer system. I went into a church, and they were asking me why their in-house sound system didn't work, and I was like, well, number one, where's the amplifier? They're like, well, it's in the ceiling. I was like, well, number one, you're putting an amplifier in the ceiling, like in the middle of Texas. They don't like dust. They don't like heat. Why would you put it there? That is the most crazy.
Yeah, that's probably the worst location.
And then I got a hold of it, and I found out that they were using a standard amplifier, like full-on amp, to drive these speakers with telephone wire going from speaker to say. I was like, thank God you work for Jesus.
Yeah.
Because your church should have burned down years ago, man.
So at 70 volt, what's great is you can drive way more speakers out of one channel. So most 70 volt speakers they'll run at 200 watts on average, like the larger speakers. So at the speaker itself, it's 200 watts, but it's being driven separately from your amp. So if you were to drive trying to push 200 watts out of just an 8-ohm speaker, and you had 16 of them, then you would have like 8 amps.
Yeah.
Well, with the 70 volt system, you can drive those 8 on one channel of the amp and the other 8 on the other channel of the amp, and you're done. And you have just one amp. You can drive the speaker with a 14 to 16 gauge, depending the distance.
Yeah. Well, and that's all.
But the only thing is that you can't push it as hard. It will not be for a full band production. I mean, you can do it.
Yeah.
But the response, it's because it has to go through the transformer at the speaker.
Exactly.
The transient is what it doesn't like
yeah, you
as
start.
much.
Yeah, you start pushing square waves
Yeah.
rapidly.
Yeah,
Rapidly.
exactly. And so you get stuck at that point.
Which-
So it's more of a PA
Yes.
as a PA should be
Correctly defined.
defined as. Yes, exactly.
It is a public address system. The only
most
thing,
people always say, what PA are you using? And I'm using this Vertex.
I'm
and
not using a
JRX or
PA,
whatever.
I'm
It's
using
not
a sound
PA.
system.
Yeah, exactly.
PA is simply for announcement.
And so a 70 volt is actually more of a PA than any of the line arrays that you see out there.
Well,
because
exactly, and that's
that's
why
that's exactly what they are.
You know, because as you know, I've done quite a bit of work in the church environment, things like that, and it always blew my mind whenever they would be like, "Oh, things sound distorted." Whenever praise and worship comes through the ceiling speakers, and I'm like, it's because even though they technically have the same range, they don't. It's about like trying to push, your full-on sound system through your car speaker.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much the same thing.
They're both 8 ohms. They're both 8 ohms,
Yeah,
right?
They're just
So
not
they should
meant
get
to,
the same thing.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people don't get sometimes. And some of the installs, when we do install a 70 volt sound system, we have to explain to them you're not using this for concerts.
Yeah.
Like you will not get the response that you want out of it, and then you'll be disappointed. And that's why we have to explain this to you, because we don't want to
That's
get
right.
the phone call or you just not calling and telling people like, oh, this company just did a horrible job
Yeah,
on our
and-
sound
well,
system.
exactly.
You have to define the limits and what the system is going to be used for, which technically, as soon as you go you visit the space, the first question you ask is, what do you need to use the sound system
What
for?
are your purposes?
You
What
know,
are
so
your
like the
needs?
rodeo, for example, it's mainly just the announcements. There is background
Yep.
music, but because the music is in the background, then a 70 volt sound system is okay. And we told them initially, they said we might have some bands at some point, and so the first idea was, well, we're going to hang a line array.
Yep.
And they were like, no, we're not going to do that many shows per year, so let's not waste the money on a line array. We'll rent it from you when we need it. And it's like, okay, well, then we'll do a 70 volt sound system, And
Sure.
so you just go back and forth, and same thing with the churches. There are some churches, a 70 volt is great because it helps in the budget.
It does.
It's really cost effective, and
Well,
the
and as
churches,
far
some
as-
of them don't have enough.
As far
But
as
they
getting
want
your,
to get the coverage done, so they'll go, well, what do we do? What do we do? And it's like, well, either you wait for the money and we give you a stellar
Well,
sound system,
and
or you just go with a 70 volt and you won't be disappointed.
well, and it depends on the church also. Like you go into a Catholic church. Most of the Catholic churches don't have a whole lot of praise and worship going on. They don't have a whole lot of full bands. They may have a
Yeah.
guitar. They may have a little bit of piano. They may have some spoken word and some singing.
And that-
Perfectly fine to pump through. All of that is within the range of the human voice.
Yeah, and
As
it's
long as
what
you're
the system
pushing,
can handle.
Exactly. Like you can push flutes through it. You could even push strings through it. You want to start pushing a cello through it?
Yeah, it's gonna struggle a little bit.
It's gonna get a little
Yeah.
rough on the low end.
Yeah, some of them are we did several Baptist church where there you do go for close to a line array.
You got to, man. You got
we have
to.
some of them.
because-
There's a new company called View
Uh-huh.
making speakers. They just
I've
did a
heard of them.
demo out on the church off of 620,
Well,
and it's the old engineer from QSC.
Okay. Okay.
And it sounds terrific. It's like, and he's partnered with Mackie. So there's a little bit of like everything in it.
Okay.
Like designs from JBL and
Now,
QSC. and
just
it's
out of
all
curiosity,
patched
have they made it to where even though it's powered, it could still be bypassed and run it with a powered amp?
I did not get to that part.
Because that is my dream. I love powered speakers, but I hate the fact that whenever that amp goes out, you got a huge paperweight.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the problem with the Music Lab is a big house really big with QSC. We love
Oh,
QSC,
yeah.
and
Who
QSC
doesn't?
has helped us throughout. Like we have partnered with them in a way that
That's great. That's
when
good for
QSC
y'all.
came out with what they call the QSys,
Yep.
we actually have the very first QSys that before QSys went on sale.
Wow.
And we sat with the engineer for a project that we did in a museum, and we sat with the engineer saying, this is what we need out of it. This is not working like the way we need it,
Yeah.
and we need to do this, or that. So the very first
Yeah.
QSys, the beta version, we have it. We were the first one to do it, and
That's
QSC
awesome.
worked with us for that. The wide line array, when it first came out, if you go at Music Lab in room A, in a production room in the back, that's their very first wide line sitting there. It's,
Oh, wow.
They gave it to us for demo, and it usually just sits there. The MediaTek Institute uses that room all the time, so they get to play on it.
Yeah.
But now QSC wants to take back that line array and instead give us the power line array.
Ooh.
Which is kind of cool, but I'm against the power line array because the power line array is going to be flown, and if that power amp goes out, then
if
you have no.
If your third speaker out of
no
5
backup.
goes out, the 2 underneath it are dead.
You can't do anything about it now. They swear and they swear and they swear that there's nothing to worry about, but
I wish that they.
I'm not a fan of having my power up in the air.
As someone who builds circuits, as someone who builds pedals and designs things, you can't tell me that there's no way that you can't pop a switch on there to go from powered to bypass.
I'm not sure why they're not
pay an
going
extra
for
$100
it.
a speaker for a bypass switch.
I'm not sure why they're not going with that, or why it's
I
not
don't know
being
why
included in
anybody
it.
does
And
it.
the thing is that you have zero, they may have upgraded it, but there was zero control initially. Once you fly it, that's it. That's what it's doing. But now I think they've integrated where you can control from your laptop, where you
That's a
can change
plus.
the frequency.
Yeah,
of
you can change the dispersion.
and everything.
else.
Where initially that wasn't in there, and
Virtually
it's like, wait a minute,
virtually
like
change your
I need to
angles.
be able to control that line array because now if
Yeah.
my amp is sitting up there with it and everything, like I want to be able to
Yeah.
change my crossover point at any given time.
Exactly.
And if I can't do that
Well,
from down here, because
and-
sometimes those changes, like you will design your line array for your gig that you're going to go into a room, and
Yes.
in your head, you're going to think, okay, this is the dispersion that I want. This is why I want my crossover points and everything. And
Yep.
you're going to fly it. And more often than not, you know very well that it's not going to be exactly as on paper when you sat in the office.
No,
you can go in the ease program and do everything and input
Yeah.
all the data and everything. But when you're going to show up, there will be a slight change that needs to be made.
Yeah,
and if
there's
you can't
always
do it
something.
from down on the ground, you have to get up back in the air to
Yeah.
do something. Well, that's not...
I mean, for real, once you get 300 people in a venue and, hey, let's say the AC cuts off and it gets 20% more humid, your sound just changed a lot.
Yeah, and now you can't do anything to it anymore.
You can't calculate that in a program.
Yeah,
You can't
but
take those
other
variables
than that,
into
like
account.
everything that they have, all their other product are. I mean, I like it.
I
you know,
love
and-
QSC, and what I love about it, I mean, if my suitcase wasn't down there blocking it, you'd be able to see my QSC amp right down there.
Yeah, their
But
amps have been.
they're lightweight, and
I-
the power ratio to
I
weight
pick 'em over
ratio
Crown.
is huge. Oh, all day long.
I pick them over Crown.
All
I
day
have
long.
people
They're
that
cleaner.
will argue with me
I-
that say the QSC amp have a dip around 400.
You know, I view
it's
Crown.
like, well,
I
if you
view-
know it's there, then you just notch
I
it
view
out. But-
Crown as the modern day PV, and here's why. Because, PV came about as originally a professional sound system company.
Right.
And then they went into amplifiers for musicians and things like that. And that's why if you look at their amps, like I have a PV amp, and that thing's loud. It's just loud. It's loud and it's clean. And that's what they did. They made amplifiers that were friggin' boat anchors.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
they
yeah.
were loud and they were clean, man. And that's the same thing with Crown. They're loud, they're clean. QSC is a little bit more natural sounding, I think. They aren't as brittle on the edges. And power to weight ratio, the Crowns are almost a good 10 pounds heavier per amplifier.
Yeah, and on the new series that QSC is launching on the amps, like these new amps are going to be like terrific. Like it's some of them are like there's a line. It's not going to be for like the average people or even venues, but it's the amp that's going to be integrated with their QSys system.
Okay.
So it's all over a network. The QSys allows you to, when you have it, you can remotely, if you install it at your, in your client's building, and they say, we're not getting sound in this area, you can log into your QSys, and you can
Nice.
trace the signal flow, and you can
Oh, wow.
listen to the signal flow on your computer. You just click on that line and go, what does it sound like over here? Is the signal still here?
Wow.
And then you go to the next speaker. Is the signal still over
So
here?
you
and
eliminate
how does it sound? And
you eliminate troubleshooting before you ever show up on site.
yeah, you don't
already
need to show
know,
up.
Wow,
you pretty
man,
much
the
don't need to show
labor
up for
time
most
that
of
is saved
the
on
yeah,
that
and
is
it's really
immense.
really neat. And that's where we
That's
started working
literally
with
a
them.
day worth of labor saved. Literally.
And you can have
Literally.
that, and you can put that in, and now so you can add those amp into it.
Well,
And you can do so much more. You can control the amp from your office and just change all the settings and do all these different,
well, and,
knickknacks with it. And
I recently worked Dell World, and one of the interesting things that I saw was this nifty little thing by Dell that's just a dongle that basically you plug it into your television, and it is a dual-core computer.
yeah,
And the guy literally hopped on his phone. He was like, check this out. He took the HDMI. It's a HDMI. He plugs it in. It's called the Dell Wise. It's a dongle. And literally plugged it into the back of the projector. Brought up his presentation. Called his secretary. And had her log in and start live changing slides.
yeah, that's.
I was like, whoa, mind blown, man. He was like, yeah, if you have a touchscreen capable TV, you can go up and make this into a sales kiosk. You can take your computer and your work with you to a hotel with just a keyboard and a mouse. Plug it into your television through the HDMI jack and sit there and have whatever size computer screen you want.
Yeah, there's some of that stuff that's
And-
coming out now that's like,
but-
it really just freaks me out how far it can go.
It's
like,
amazing
with
where
the-
they've taken it.
I've
where they've
stepped
taken
away.
things.
I just recently stepped away from my iPhone, and I moved to
Good for
a
you.
Galaxy. You know,
Good for you. Welcome. That means
yeah.
that means everybody. Whenever we have the crowdfunding done for the app, you can have our app on your phone.
That's right. No, I moved away. Like I've had an iPhone since like the 3
Yeah.
or whatever, and for
Yeah,
so
you
long
were
I was
always an
kind
iGuy.
of in it because some of the apps that I had were expensive that I paid for, and they were sound related apps, and I didn't
Yeah.
want to. And unfortunately, they would not let you transfer it to any other devices,
No,
so
you
you were
can't.
stuck with it. But finally, I was just like, you know what, I want to make a change. I want to try something else. I want to see what some of these other phones have.
Yeah.
I took the Galaxy S5, and man, it has some pretty neat stuff. Like it
Yeah.
detects the Roku player at my house, so I can
Yeah.
watch my photos or videos on my phone, but I can connect to the Roku, and all of a sudden, bam, there it is on the TV, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like I can control. I have infrared control on it, so I control my remote for the TV, for my DVR, my LED lights that I have plugged into the back of the TV. I found the IR codes for it,
Oh wow.
and you can enter your own
Yeah, yeah.
little codes in this one little app that I downloaded from the store, and so I entered the IR code, and I can change the color of my LEDs and everything.
Oh, that's
Everything
awesome.
from my phone, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, I can't do that with an
Well,
iPhone.
our good friend Wes Goins, who's out on tour with Marvel Universe right now, he has a Barco app, and he was telling me literally, and I downloaded it for my phone, and it's awesome. If your barcode projector is wireless capable, like you can literally dial in the IP address and do everything with the projector from the ground. Like he's mapping like 5 and 6 projectors together with his iPhone.
Yeah, the Christie
It's
Christies
just-
are doing the
it's
same thing
crazy,
now. and
crazy
but that's the
stuff,
thing when you
crazy
step
stuff.
away. Once you can step away from Apple, they did do something great,
They did.
but unfortunately they stopped to the point where it's
Well, the
like
problem
we're
that
not
I've-
going to let you do this or that,
As-
like not being able to have the Flash.
And that's just
That's
as-
a killer because
as someone,
so many people rely on Flash.
As someone
you know?
who's a tinkerer, like most of my computers I purpose build. And I
Yeah.
build them myself. I will literally hop onto Craigslist, find me a $100 computer that meets the specs that I need for RAM and everything else on the motherboard, and I'll get it for cheap, and I'll build it out myself. And I love doing it. And I can't even tell you how many. There's probably about 10 computers in my home. Probably.
Nice.
I mean, it's wrong. It's a sick amount. Like if I have computers in my closet just in case I need to build one. Literally,
I have some spare parts
I
laying
got
around
some. I
just
got
in
some
case.
skeletons in my closet, literally. But you can't do that with an Apple. It blew my mind working broadcast that our entire studio was Mac based, and these iMacs were awesome. They're like 5G, man, like $5,000. But dude, if that audio card gives out, we got a $5,000 paperweight that does nothing for us live on
Yeah.
broadcast. How can we like? Otherwise, we could literally send someone with a credit card, go to Best Buy, get a sound card, and come back, pop it in, and we're back on air. We
Well,
can cover for 30
That's the thing.
minutes.
There's a lot of guys you'll see.
But-
They'll build a Hackintosh.
Yep.
And they do the dual platform. And some
Mm-hmm.
people are like, well, my Mac, I just installed the dual platform but it's like, yeah, but you're limited to what your
Well-
Mac is doing. You can't go, I mean, you can. If you're really good and you're programming and everything. You can go into that computer and do some of the stuff on the Mac, but it's a lot easier to take a PC and turn it into a Mac.
Yeah.
Because you have so much more control, so much more variety of the equipment that you can put behind,
You're
what you
actually
can
telling
do.
your computer what to do.
Yeah, and so you can have a lot more fun with it. Like I still have a Mac at home that I don't use very often with it. I have now
man,
my
they excel at some things beyond.
some of the stuff that they do. Like I've used Pro Tools
Incredibly.
on Mac and PC, and I'm sorry, but Pro Tools
Yep.
on a PC is sluggish no matter what PC you get.
Yeah.
It works
That's why
like
I don't use
dynamite
Pro
on a
Tools.
Mac, and I love it. But at home, like now, my main laptop that I rely on every day is an Acer with Windows 8, which I don't know, everybody cries about it. But it's touchscreen.
Yeah.
And for me, which is awesome because I run some of my sound apps and
your
lighting
plugins
apps
and things like that.
I have my lighting controller that works out of on my PC, and I use the touchscreen, and it's so much easier because a lot of times, like that's what people were complaining initially was, man, like controlling my lights through my computer is kind of cool, but I don't have a way to touch the button. I have to do everything through just the mouse, so it's a single touch, and as lighting, you have to be fast with your lighting.
And you can't get the finesse in there of, moving faders and, getting a butterfly effect with your fingers and things like that,
So what I have, on the touchscreen, that's the advantage, and that's why I love that computer, is I can go and do control all my lights a lot faster, and it's a lot more fun with it that way. And I love that thing. Now everybody is like, man, you don't use a Mac, and it's like, have I showed you what I can do with my PC? Because bring in your Mac, and you're going to struggle to do it the same way that I do now.
And it's funny because you put a Mac with the exact same specs into something like Adobe Premiere, or even try with a PC with Adobe Premiere and a Mac with Final Cut, and the Premiere machine will just about always outrender the Mac machine.
And the other problem with Mac that I have, and I think most of the AV guys have it, as far as not being fun, is they're not video friendly in show production.
No, I literally saw a Mac crash at Rush.
Yeah.
At Rush. I saw it glitch out in the middle of and hey man, if you're a Rush head like me, you know that projected video content in the background is like, that's a third of the show.
Yeah.
Like everything is synced to it. And it was in the middle of one of like their little interludes, where like they take a break from a song and there's like a little story video that goes on in between the songs. It kind of leads into the next one. And it was in one of those. And I saw it crash, and I saw the guy down at the control booth, and I was like, look at that, man, it's a Mac.
Yeah, see, like some of the installs that we do now, with like as far as video, it's all video over Cat5.
Yeah.
A lot of them
I love that.
HDMI inputs. Most consumers want HDMI, and a lot of laptops are starting to come out with only an HDMI output. Now, they do give you a little dongle to convert to VGA.
That ticked me off when Dell did that.
But some of them don't. And if you don't have that little dongle, then you're stuck to HDMI. So a lot of the installs now, we have to provide an HDMI input.
Yep.
But there's always this issue. When you're going to bring in a Mac, it may not work because Mac is looking for that HDCP handshake, that EDID handshake. And if it does not recognize the program as it wants, that is not allowed to pass HDCP content.
If it didn't get that micro voltage back to it,
then it stops. And I had one client where we put a $25,000 Christie, and every laptop throughout the whole day worked. And this one guy, he was from the McDonald Observatory, really nice guy, shows up with his Mac and plugs it in, and nothing wants to come up. And he goes, I got this cheap little $200 projector here that works every time. And I go for it, man. And it sat there on the stage beating my Christie, and I was just like, I have a $25,000 projector that is now just a giant paperweight. It's just so frustrating.
It wasn't your projector.
Well, yeah, it wasn't.
It was not your projector.
And this system, it involved, because he plugged in directly into his projector, and I explained to him, I was just like, you're going into this wall plate that now converts over Cat5, that runs back into a rack, that goes into a distribution switcher, that comes back out to the projectors. So there's literally, I think, from the wall plate to the projector, there's 4 different handshakes that happen. Now the Mac stops at the converter in the rack, and that's where it has an issue. It doesn't want to let the HDCP because it thinks it's not HDCP compliant, even though the little unit is, and that whole HTCP thing is like a real nightmare.
It's a great thing when you're using HTCP compliant.
It's
beautiful
great
thing.
to try to protect content, but at the same time, it's like limiting you.
Well,
and there are some like little
I've just
you can buy an HD Fury
Yeah.
that will
I've just
strip the
found
HTCP
that
out.
In general, when it comes to networking and things like that, PCs do generally a whole lot better job of shaking hands with just about everything.
Yeah, they have it a lot easier. Even on my TV, every now and then, the Mac doesn't want to connect right, and sometimes when it does, it will screw up the TV in a way that, like, the next time I plug in my laptop into it, 30 HDMI, then the TV doesn't want to get back to the right
Doesn't wanna
1080
sync.
resolution
Yeah, it
because
doesn't wanna
my
sync
laptop
the-
can't actually push a true 1080.
Yeah.
And the laptop will keep telling me it won't do 1080, you know.
Yeah, it won't
and
refresh
it's
the
just
hertz
like,
rate.
come on, like just do it. And then
Yep.
finally it catches, and I found out that it's every time I plug in that Mac. So Mac is not allowed on the TV anymore because that's just like a pain in the neck. I like to watch my TV full screen and full 1080. The content on my computer looks nice in 1080, not when it's like squeezed out or stretched or overscanned, you know, whatnot. And it's like, that's a pain in the neck. But some of that stuff now, you know, like everything is running over Cat 5. Like we're doing a job right now where, you know, our inputs and outputs are all over Cat 5.
Yeah.
All of the control is done through a tablet where, you know, the control is happening in the rack, and I did all the programming through all the RS-232.
Okay.
And we're relying heavily on Wi-Fi to communicate with all these different equipments. And so some of the like what we initially do is we tell the client, you're responsible for providing us a network if you have one, but these are our demands.
Yeah.
You know, we're very specific about it.
Yeah.
If you don't, we're bringing in our own wireless router. And they're very expensive ones. Yeah, it's not just like we
Yeah,
did one
it's
job,
not
but the
just
guy was like, "Oh, I'm just going to go to Best Buy and buy, you know, the $50 one." It's like, no. This has
it's
to be
not the
very
same thing.
specific. We buy some from Package or Ingenious, and we map them out the way we need them. And this way, you know, no one has access to it and all that stuff. And some of the companies have a big IT department. And the IT guy initially like follows along with what you're saying and everything is working. And then 3 months later, you get a phone call. We changed the network. And like, well, no, first they say nothing works anymore. Okay. Is the network running? Well, yeah. Okay. Did you do anything to it? Well, yeah, we just changed like all our access points. And it's like, well, remember that unit that sits in the rack? There's a certain IP that it has. You need to give that back.
Yeah,
you need to, you know, and then you show back up. And some of them you can't do remote control into it because, you know, they're secured servers. They won't give you access because
They're
even
not
through a
supposed
VPN.
to give you access.
Yeah, because it's like, well, if you give you a VPN now, we've
it's-
become vulnerable because of you. And so they don't trust us.
It's made specifically for you to come interface your stuff with it to make the changes.
And so, you know, yeah, that's the networking.
On purpose.
You got to always be careful because a lot of these companies will tell you like, yeah, we have our own IT guy, and the guy understands what you're trying to do initially, but sometimes somewhere in there it gets lost and
well, it's
doesn't
different whenever,
follow your specs entirely of what you're asking for, and it's like,
Granted, you have to remember though, most IT guys are, you know, hooking up files to server, hooking up computer to server, hooking up a printer.
yeah, yeah. It's
You know,
they miss the.
That's. I mean, you got to be fair with them. They aren't necessarily using the networking for the same protocols that we're working in for.
And they don't always see it that way.
Because we're literally pushing whenever we're doing things like that. Whenever we're installing wireless control systems, whenever you're using Bluetooth dongles to control sound systems, you are pushing a wireless system to its max capacity as far as signal ratio and how many signals incoming, outgoing it's got.
Yeah, and sometimes asking for that specific, you know, it's like we need to be on our own wireless. Like nobody
For
else
a
can
reason.
tap into it. Yeah,
Yeah.
for that very specific reason. Like we created an app to control a biamp processor.
Okay.
Biamp doesn't make one yet.
Oh wow.
So we created our own app and we made a little mixer on an iPad for a
Okay.
biamp system, which
Wow.
you're not supposed to be able to do technically yet.
Sure.
They're going to find out and they're
Well,
going to
yeah,
make
but
one.
if you know the protocols and
but,
things
you know,
like that for the
we made
programming,
one.
it's not that tough.
And we brought in our own wireless, and eventually they did their own wireless network for their guests. And the guy that they brought is using the new Cisco X band, which no one can buy yet, and like no one out there can buy it.
Yeah.
But he's like a super guru in the world out there, and like he gets some stuff in advance from Cisco, and he told me, he said, "Get rid of your router. I'm gonna put you on mine." And I said, "Wait a minute, hang on. I need a separate SSID, and I need this, and that on it." Now, this is a guy that, like, he truly understands what we're doing, and he was just like, okay, I'm going to give you all these controls and all that flexibility, and now you can go into your office and check some of the stuff from here. But it's complicated because on the network, some of the stuff that we have carries all the audio, so the app has to control with our biamp, and it has to talk specifically. It cannot conflict with any other, like, traffic, like packets can get lost. And then on the video side, you know, we have a video switcher in there that we can IP stream, and that requires a lot of bandwidth. Yeah. But at the same time, the unit is like, there's the control unit, and then there's the video part of that unit, and so it's like, well, I need this to be on that part of the network, and I need the video part on a separate part of the network because it's going to clog it up.
Yeah.
But I still need those two bands to be mine.
People, even whenever I did broadcast on air and we were doing live Skype feeds and things like that, people would always be like, "Oh, I'm not seeing your Skype video," and we would have to explain to them, we'll be sending you broadcast audio, but we will be keeping the broadcast video from you to make sure that there is enough bandwidth for your video to come to us unbroken.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's whenever it's trying to send both videos both ways that it starts.
Yeah.
It starts boxing
and when you're
junky.
doing the video and the audio, and on top of it now you're throwing control. Now you're asking for so much that you really have to separate things out, because you can't have conflict, because the control relies on the wireless.
Exactly.
But some of the video is on that network as well. It needs to communicate to that processor, and I mean, it's a giant, it's a mess. It's a giant mess.
It is.
And it's really easy to get lost if something doesn't work, like, because now you're troubleshooting.
All you need is one decimal out of place, and it's all gone.
The troubleshooting goes so much further now than it used to.
And that's one reason why, and I know I've told you why, like, even my lighting console over here for all this, man, I will rec shop, faders and flash packs all day long. If I need to do something DMX wise, that's why I know people like JC. I will cross rent JC for the day and be like, I got a guy that knows that a whole lot better than I do. Let me bring him in and make sure we get this done properly.
Man, lighting took me a while. Well, not took me a while to understand how to separate things with the DMX universe and how many fixtures you want to, like. The first time one of the gigs, that I first learned lighting on wasn't through DMX. It was just standard, stage spin stuff. Yeah. So that, no problem. I learned it in theater. It was just like, bam, that's easy.
And everything else.
And then you start bringing in all the movers and everything. Yeah. And they were like, okay, that run out of the opto splitter, and I was like, the opto what?
The opto who's it?
Okay, now I get it. I know what it is. I understand it. And then, but I wasn't explained the first time around why they were splitting the lines this way. And then I had one guy told me, he was like, some movers have to be in one chain by themselves. They don't like to be with the LED parts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the languages aren't the same.
The movers and non-movers have to be separated, preferably. And then they will tell you need to just put this amount of movers on this one channel, and then these other movers on this on separate channel, like try to differentiate and separate the worlds and the universes and it goes crazy, like some of the stuff that I'm still like learning a lot of it, and like I watched the Winter Olympics of Russia, and it was actually a high-end system from right here in Austin that was, did the whole thing as far as the lighting go, and it's actually beyond just lighting, it's video mapping and everything that they did, but that is like some crazy stuff right there. That is one I would not have wanted to really be a part of, because there's so much going on in that one. Like, it takes some like really brilliant brain thinking. Like, you can't lose track. And that point, you really got to be spot on. You can't show up clouded in your head.
No.
There's way too much on the line with that kind of stuff. Like versus a show. Those I'm comfortable with.
Well, hey, and it's like I've told people, rock and roll, hey, people expect to hear a squeal here and there. You know,
Yeah.
That's part of the natural ambiance and the synergy between stage and lighting and house and everything else. But yeah, man, whenever you get into the corporate environment, whenever you start getting into things like that, there's no second take. There's no second Olympics.
Yeah,
2014.
and the thing that happens with the corporate part, what's difficult to
You start losing
is
money rapidly.
You charge an arm and it's very expensive to do these gigs.
It
You know,
ain't-
like when you
it
see the
ain't
bills
easy.
that go out to these clients, it's
It ain't
like,
easy, man.
man, like rock and roll is way cheaper than that. You
Oh,
know,
God,
like
yeah.
renting all this back
Oh,
line
God,
and
yeah.
all the lights and all the line arrays.
Absolutely.
On a rock show, it's super dirt cheap. On a corporate show, that same line array just jumped like $2,000 all of a sudden per day. You know, or
Yeah.
some crazy numbers like that. Like it's just ridiculous. So when you put all that stuff together, it better work because the company is sending out an invoice that's so expensive. They want that client back. So
That's
you
right.
you know you need to know what you're doing and like not screw it up. Like that's what I like. You know, working with when I was doing the gigs with Green Hat.
Yeah.
You know, with how Scott was overseeing some of these shows, like, and being so diligent. And I understood it, you know, it's like,
Sure.
because you are sending a
Sure.
pretty hefty bill to these customers.
That's
so
right,
you want
man.
to make sure that, you know, it's kind of like delivering a Ferrari.
Yeah, you want to make sure
it has
it's-
every little
right.
thing on it has to work flawlessly.
That's
you
it.
can't just cut corners and say, well,
Yeah.
you know, we'll fix it next time.
Yeah.
Like, no, you got to fix it like now. You
It's
got
all
to
right
try to
that that
figure it out.
tire's out of balance by like,
Yeah.
a degree. It's okay, man. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no,
But-
it's
No, and something that you were bringing up earlier, I'd like to revisit it. You were talking about the line arrays and crossovers, things like that, and being able to set them. Something that I've noticed, especially with the trend of things moving to the line array type system, especially with the smaller line arrays by JBL, things like that, which are great small little systems. I find it interesting how most people still want to skip the whole process of at least having a processing rack with that, and just want to use the built-in crossover that's there. And I mean, I guess it's valid. It's there. It's a crossover, but I find that it's better off for the lifespan of your speakers and things like that to have an actual dedicated crossover and tell it exactly what frequencies you go where.
yeah.
Or where you want them going.
Having the processor with you on hand at front of house is way better because something can happen and you might be able to, if you're able to hear it and dissect it out while your show is going on, sometimes it is really handy to have your processor right next to you because you can say, man, that speaker is being driven at that point. I need to switch that and just move it up so that like now it doesn't get that hit anymore.
Exactly.
And back again, like the different processors that you have out there, you know, like the DBX ones, you can control them from your computer and you can make some of these changes like on the fly, or you can recall presets. And sometimes some of them,
I love
you know,
those.
that like when you
I
want to
love
recall,
those
it'll
installs.
mute audio so that there's no pops in your system or anything. So if you
Yeah.
find a good point, now you know you do have to be careful because it can screw up. It is computer based at that point, so there are, you know.
Yeah.
You got to be careful with it when you do it, and doing it on the fly sometimes is not the best idea. Sometimes you don't have a choice, you know, you just got to go, okay, I got to recall this, like right now, I'm screwed, you know.
Yeah.
Not having one with you, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Yeah,
That's really, I mean, depending the gig that you're doing, you know, like maybe the show doesn't call for anything crazy.
Well, I've seen it more and more frequently where people are showing up with just a digital PreSonus board and, you know, one of the small line arrays, thing that, you know, one of the small digital sound systems. And I think it's a great idea in theory. You know, as much as I've got a faux digital console over here.
Right.
You know, I've got it's a FireWire interface that's built into a console, so I can get 8 straight into my computer.
Right.
But I don't know. I guess I don't trust digital fully enough. You know, it's one of those like, hey, if that reverb that I have going on goes out, that means the motherboard's out, and that means I have no show.
Yeah, so QSE came out with what's called the Touch Mix.
Okay.
It's really cool. It's pretty neat. You can do so much. You know, you have all your tracks, and you can have
Sure.
multiple iPads to control it. So, like, the guys that are on stage can make their own mix and everything. And it's all
for their
fine and
monitors and
dandy.
stuff like that.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's
it's
cool.
fine
That's
and
cool.
dandy. It's great.
Kind
It
of like
has
a little
great
private
power.
avian system on a
but-
wireless network.
Yeah, but the thing is that it's that one entire little unit. It's the size of It's about the size of an iPad, maybe slightly bigger.
Okay.
And some of the guys are going crazy about it. I'm like, yeah, it's a neat little toy, but so much can break down on it, and it goes out so quick. I mean, like we have an iLive that recently the screen wouldn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And nobody was paying attention to the error message, and it was like, wait, just read that error message, call that underneath, and then be like, hey, this is the message I'm getting on my screen. What's going on? And the iLive has 2 onboard computers, one for the screen and one for the console itself. So
that way,
they were smart. You can still use the console. You just don't have the screen anymore. Now, some people freak out. They're like, I can't do anything without the screen. It's like, well, no, you still can, because there's still, like, all your knobs are still there. They're still labeled. You know what it is that you're changing and everything. You just don't see it on the screen. It's okay. Don't freak out.
I wouldn't be going through and trying to change your reverbs or delays unless it's set to a tap function or something like that.
But
as far as functionality on your faders and your
everything
strips,
was still there. It was still there.
Yeah,
but
that's why
even
you
a
have
console
channel
like
tape.
that, you know, like the computer went out.
Yeah, but that's why you have channel tape.
Yeah.
That's why you have board tape. See, so when that like $1,000 console goes out, you still know what your channels are doing.
Yeah, and the thing was, like, it's not that big of a deal. Look at your error message. Don't just go, we need to send it out. We've tried everything. We tried rebooting it and everything. It's like you need to remember that, like, all these machines out there now are all computer based, and inside of them there's a processor somewhere. There's a drive. There's just like your regular computer. It's just crammed underneath the faders. It doesn't look like one, but it is a computer inside.
It is.
Sometimes you need, if you're capable enough to understand error messages and see what they are, or if you have a little bit of computer savviness, where, like, a lot of these consoles now, you can put them on networks and stuff, so you can go and try to ping stuff and figure stuff out. And, like, all ours was the little flash card for the screen driver was slightly out of the socket, and I just went and pushed it back, turned the console back on, the screen came back, and everybody was like, how'd you do that? I tried everything. It's like, well, you need to learn what those messages are.
That's right.
You know, like sound guys or lighting guys out there, like, you have to move on to the computer world nowadays. It's not just running copper wire from out of your amps to your speakers from your console.
It's not that simple anymore.
The tracing, the issues are just like, they're going further and further and further away, and if you don't understand network, like, especially a lot of the consoles now are running over digital snakes. Some of them you can put them on network, and you need to understand all that networking. You see some of the racks from, like, PRG and stuff.
Yeah, they've got
their racks. They have their wireless and their routers and everything in there, and they tell you, do not touch it.
Yeah.
Turn it on, do not touch it. But in the back, there's always a sticker that says, by the way, this unit should be set to this IP address, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, and some people don't understand it. They're like, well, I don't know how to change that. And it's like, you don't know how to log in with your computer and log into the router and give it the information it needs. You're going to need to take a course, because you will not be able to do this job much longer. That's just it.
Well,
you won't be able to do it much longer.
I've run across numerous bands where they're like, hey, you know, this thing just started glitching out and stuff like that. And, you know, much like any software, I know you may not like a bunch of emails. May not like a bunch of emails. I don't like a bunch of emails. I have emails that are specifically for warranty and stuff like that. But those emails are important, man. Whenever updates come out, whenever bugs are found in an operating system and updates come out, you need to know about that. And your board isn't going to automatically update itself whenever it plugs into a computer. It just isn't going to do that.
Yeah, I've seen that enough.
So you really have to make sure that you're keeping up with firmware updates, that you're keeping up with drivers, you know, all that kind of stuff, man. Because whenever your board is your effects processor, it's everything. You know, there's so much that goes into that if you don't keep up with that.
Yeah, if you don't know, if you don't care, you just go, well, it worked last week, you know, why did it stop working today?
Yeah.
Well, you need to be able to like, now the troubleshooting has evolved into this next level where it is a networking troubleshooting part.
It is.
And you need to be able to understand some of that, you know, like I see with, like I told you, like in the installs, a lot of our stuff requires to run on a network.
Yep.
And so most people don't even know how to ping, you know, or even find out what their IP address is. They're like, well, I'm connected. And it's like, what does your IP say?
Yeah.
Well, how do I do that? Okay, if it's a 168 or 162, you know, that's your own generated inside the computer IP address. You are not technically connected to the network yet.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that. But you need to be able to find that, and then you need to be able to ping certain IP addresses to know if they're talking or not. Like some of the so Biamp came out with a system called Vocia, which is entirely network based.
Yep.
And you need to understand on that one. You have to understand networking to its full extent, because that's how the whole system works. And we're talking like the school that we did. I mean, it's 18 amps that are all on a network with one main processor that connects to another building where there's 16 more amps that are all connected to that main master processor.
Wow.
And the one that's in there is a slave one, and you need to understand how they have to communicate to each other.
Yep.
And like some of it was beyond me because I didn't get the training for it. You need to go and get trained by Biamp to understand how Vocia works entirely. You can't just go, well, I know networking and I know a little bit about it, and I just need to set these things up this way. It's like, no. There's a very specific way how it talks. You need to learn about it, and once you know about it, you're the guy basically that becomes responsible for it because nobody else has a clue how it works.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff, some of the glitches that came up were like stupid. It was simply because one of the IP was conflicting when someone would come in with like an iPad or something, and it would like stop making the bells come up and ring or something, and it was like it was all about a stupid IP thing, which goes back to what I was saying before when I say this is the IP range that we need. You need to block it out. Do not let anybody else get on that block because it will screw things up.
And we have it all the time, man. It's getting more and more common where you're in the middle of a corporate show, you've got all your mics leveled out and ready to go, and it's fantastic. And then you get 500 execs in the room, all with a cell phone, with their wireless engaged, all with their iPads and mobile devices with wireless engaged, and then suddenly people are like, oh, why does the audio sound funky? It's like, those gigahertz signals are much stronger than my megahertz signal, and they're just creating a blanket of haze that my signal's trying to cut through. And
actually, I have a funny one about that.
You can't get through it sometimes.
We did a gig a couple of months ago at the LBJ, and it was about, defense, U.S. defense. So the people that were in the room, they were some really high-level people. And at one point, the wirelesses were doing some of the strangest things that I've never heard a wireless mic do. One of them, the mic was not even on, and it was squelching through the PA. And then another one was I would take a handheld that was in the 600 range in front of a receiver that was in the 500 range, and the receiver would say that the mic was on, and audio was coming, it has a little battery indicator, and it's receiving RF.
Yeah.
And I was just, freaking out, and, we couldn't use the mics anymore. We had to downgrade to just one wired mic, basically.
Yep.
And the lady at UT was like, what do you think is going on? And me, I was kind of just joking around. I go, well, with all these people from NSA and CIA, and, there's some of these cell phones in there that may have some weird stuff going on. And she goes, oh my God, I didn't think about that. And then shortly after, there was a guy from the Secret Service that was doing a sweep of the building because that weekend Joe Biden was in town.
Yep.
And some people might not be aware, but when Secret Service comes around, they have towers to jam any kind of signal from as low as down to the lowest megahertz to the highest gigahertz.
Where when Big Boy shows up at the show, all my wireless mics just drop out.
Yeah.
Boom.
I mean,
they're
I was
out, and then a minute later they come back on, and that's how you know that motorcade has just passed by you.
Yeah.
Because they just literally jammed every signal as they roll by.
We had I remember when I worked at the W, and he showed up to go at the Moody Theater next door, and they said there will be no service from this hour to that hour.
Yeah, we will have a blackout.
And I watched it. I turned on my phone, AT&T, full bars, and then all of a sudden it just whoosh, no service, and I was just like, wow, what did you just do? And we had clients in the hotel. I was servicing 5 rooms, and at least we had been warned that they said we're gonna cut off all communications for 4 hours or 2-3 hours, something like that. And I wound up having to go tell all the clients in the room that I ordered Wi-Fi, and I said, by the way, you're gonna lose network. For the last hour of your meeting, because by the time he showed up, some of these meetings were about ending. They were overlapping just by a little bit. And I told those people, I was like, there's nothing I can do. You can't go complain to the hotel. This is Secret Service. you can go and complain to them if you want. I was like, good luck with that. I tried it. Like, they came the night before. They do a sweep of the entire building. And they came into my office in the middle of the night with the dogs. They opened every single road case. They took everything out. And so, you know, when you're in AV and you have a room like this big, and you stack up your stuff in it as best as you can. And these guys come and open it up, and it takes an entire hallway. And I remember that morning, like, coming in, and I'm like, what's all my gear doing out here? And I go down to the security office. I'm like, hey, dude, like...
Look like somebody came in and ransacked
like, they just ransacked my whole entire office. And he's like, oh, they did a security sweep. I was like, well, anybody's going to put it back? And this big dude turns around, he goes, nope, that's your job. And I was just like, I looked at him, I was like, really, guy? Really?
Really?
Like, you're going to take all this gear out? I was like, I need to go and check that all my projectors are working, because they were not even back in the cases the way they're supposed to. There was one projector that was sitting up, like it was the lens was facing down.
Yeah.
And I was just like, dude, like,
let me come mistreat your gun. Let's see how you like it.
You know, but I mean, I've watched them do like some crazy stuff, and I was just like, and I've been stuck with the president or vice president several times on different gigs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hate when you guys come in town because I can't work. Like, something stops working, or you mess up all my gear, you move everything around, or I can't leave the building. Like,
that's when I love being a true analog lover and doing everything analog. You can have a hard time cutting out my microphone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's like I told you at LBJ, we had to rely on a good old wired mic because they couldn't screw that up.
Yeah, you can't crush that one.
But it's freaky when you see wireless mic doing stuff that I'd never seen do it before, and I was just like, wow, like, really, what did you guys do to, like, screw me up like this? You must have some... And I wanted to just leave at that point. I was like, I don't even want to be here. Like, you know, during the day, I was, like, typing stuff on my phone, and then halfway through, I realized the list of the people that were in there.
Yep.
And I was just like, maybe I should turn all this off, because I don't know who's in the room. I don't know what's being monitored. Like, maybe I'm a little crazy, but I don't think I am. And, like, and then by the end of the day, when everything screwed up, I was like, I was right to just turn off my phone, because this was... It was not, you know, it feels kind of like unpleasant, because you know that your stuff is being, you know, crushed and washed, and you just, you have no control of it, and it's just like,
it's a kick to the technical nerds whenever it happens, man, because there's nothing you can do about it. Like, you just get to deal.
Yeah, you just have to sit there and go, well, it's out of my control, there's nothing I can do about it, sorry, your show just went to shit. Not my fault, really.
Man,
like, I can't.
With the S-bomb.
Ooh, my bad.
That's all right.
I always forget
With
that.
With both of our rock and roll mouths, I'm very proud of both of us. Now, to switch gears in the last few minutes, you have told me about some very exciting happenings going on in your life with your lovely lady. Give us a little tip on that action.
Yeah,
let us know what's happening. I'm excited.
She is going to open a growler station. So for those that don't know what a growler station is, or a growler first, a growler is like the 64-ounce glass jar that you can fill up with your beer. You put the cap back on, you bring it home, and the beer is still fresh. You have about like a few days to drink. But a growler holds 4 pints. So really, when you're going to fill it up, you're going to go home that night, and that next morning it's most likely going to be empty because it's only 4 pints. Yeah. And I drink about 4 pints of good craft beer. And so she's only going to sell, she's planning on having about 30 taps of local craft beer. So it's going to be,
that's great.
90% of it is going to be Old Texas beer.
That's fantastic. That's great.
The place is called 4 Pints. It's going to... We haven't had a location yet. There's a website, 4pints.com. As soon as the location pops up, it most likely will be in South Austin, like the Manchac 1626 area.
All right. Seems to be
that's where she is from.
And it's where everything's moving to.
Yeah, her family has been there for like a very long time. So, like some of the street names are named after her family members, like her brother on 1626, Doug Moreland, the wood carver and country artist. He lives down there. And we both live down there, and she's going to open that up. So, so you'll be able to come up, fill up your growler with whatever craft beer that you want. We're a very big fan of craft beer. My favorite, me personally, is the IPA.
Yeah,
always.
They're nice. They're good and hoppy.
Any of them,
they get you.
Exactly. They get you going. They get your blood pumping. The next day, not so much. You don't get it. You know, you're a little slow and you need that little coffee. And then our favorite one, which I tend to do a little bit of a Smokey and a Bandit. She's from Fort Davis, way out in West Texas, a little bit before El Paso. there's a brewery out there called Big Band Brewing Company, and they make an excellent beer, like really good stuff. But they only sell out in El Paso and Midland, and I think maybe Odessa they're going to start soon. So you can't get it in Austin. They will never come to Austin to distribute it. First of all, it's like 7 hours away.
Yeah, it's a tough.
Yeah,
it's a tough trek.
But every time I make some trips and we come back from some beer, and last time I agreed to drive a band was going on tour, and their bus driver couldn't leave with them yet, and so I drove them out to Fort Davis or Alpine, where the brewery is, and I left Austin on a Sunday night, came back on a Monday afternoon. So I just did, 14 hours of driving and came back with like over $200 worth of beer just to bootleg the beer. Basically, I was like, Smokey and the Bandit run.
I did the same thing whenever I lived in Mamou, Louisiana, taking care of my little nephew. I'm a big fan of Shinerbach. Whenever I lived in Maine, I would always pack a little bit loose and bring a couple of hoodies even in the middle of summer, and I would always wrap up a case of Shinerbach in my check luggage and bring it back with me. But I would literally bring like a couple of bottles to all the people that ran the local stores in Mamou, Louisiana. Like, hey, check this out. If you get this, I'll buy it regularly. And
when I first
now
moved
it's
here,
like the most popular beer over there. Like everybody drinks it like crazy.
When I first moved here from New York, that's what I did. I moved down here with some Yingling because you can't find Yingling,
Yingling.
and that's really good beer. I like it.
Oh.
And then I did a case. The last case that I came back with, I had left some in the back of the fridge for a long time. And then one day I had a friend. I was like, "Oh, you need to try this," and he's like, "This doesn't taste that good. You keep raving about it."
Oldest operating craft brewery in America.
I drank it, and I was just like, "Crap! I've had them for way too long. That's why it doesn't taste that good." Actually, funny thing, my roommate in college, his dad works at the brewery.
Oh wow!
In Pottsville, and I've taken a tour of the brewery and drank beer at the brewery. I was not 21. But thankfully, to my good old roommate's dad working there, we were allowed to get a little free sampling without no one asking our age. So that was nice. But the beer is the one. I'm going to be helping her out with the shop, and hopefully, once it's open, there will be, we'll be welcoming musicians and whatnot, and maybe do some. She's saying maybe her brother wants to do a radio show, his radio show every now and then down there.
Well, I was gonna say, man, I'd love to do a live remote sometime.
Yeah,
that'd be fantastic.
Totally.
Do a live remote from the Growler Room, so
and we can get some beer.
That'd be great. Well, hey, JC, thank you so much for joining us
thanks for having me.
Hey,
a lot of fun.
Anytime, and please, everybody, don't forget to stop on by www.4pints.com. That's FOUR, just like the number 4, FOUR pints.com. www.4pints.com to check out that new Growler Room that's coming here to Austin. And also, please, don't forget to check us out online, www.talkingsoundshow.com. You can also check us out on YouTube, Talking Sound Show there. Please, go on to Patreon. Patreon is where we are doing all of our crowdfunding for not only the broadcast, but also for the upcoming Talking Sound app. We're trying to raise money to get our app going so that all of this fantastic information, the podcast, the videos, articles, press releases from major manufacturers, things like that can be right there in your hands. You can have all the latest industry information. Go check out patreon.com/Talking Sound. You can also find us Talking Sound Show on SoundCloud, as well as Talking Sound Podcast on Spreaker.com. So, once again, I am Chris Jordan. I'm your host for the Talking Sound Podcast. And until next time, take care, everybody. Have a great week.
This is Talking Sound.